Anyone willing to share their greatest fear? Oh, wow, Joe, right up. Yeah. Clowns. Greatest fear is clowns. Anyone else willing to share the greatest fear? No? Okay, Chris. The IRS. I thought you were going to say the Irish for a second, which also makes sense, but the IRS. Being alone. That's very true for Robert. Yeah, if he's alone in the house, you will find another house to go to. It'll just be like, the next house, hey, is there a couch that I can sit on? What do you want? People to be around? That's it. He doesn't even have to talk to people. He just wants to be in their presence. All right, John, sorry. What? Heights, fear of heights. Of the typical greatest fears, one of the greatest fears is death. And an even greater one is public speaking. So what I'm doing now is surpassing the fear for a lot of people of death. So hey, let's have a little applause maybe. All right, there you go. It was never a great fear for my life. But of the list of fears, you kind of hear the same things over and over. IRS is a new one. That's more realistic, honestly. But there's some things that you never hear that really should be on the list. And I'm specifically going to talk about one today. Sometimes you do get the fear of failure. And I think this is a very intelligent fear. Maybe it's because it's the only one that I can say I have that. I've never been afraid of clowns or cockroaches. I always think it's kind of silly because they can't hurt you. So that fear never makes sense to me. And clowns, they're supposed to bring you joy and happiness. You've read too much Stephen King. Anyway, but there is a fear like the fear of failure that I think limits us and paralyzes us. And it's a great fear that a lot of us have, if not all of us. It's the fear of hope. The fear of hope. Now, what's different between the fear of failure and the fear of hope is the fear of failure is still at least somewhat in my control. Right? The fear of failure is I'm not even going to try because I'm too scared that I might try and then fail. And that's a very understandable fear. I sometimes get that fear of I don't know if I can do this. But the fear of hope is a fear that you're putting your hope in something that then ends up a fool's errand and there was no good in it. All right? So you could do everything right and still it ends in disaster. The fear of commitment, which many guys have, a few women I'm sure, but many guys have, the fear of commitment is a similar fear. Because you're fearing sometimes that you will fail, but often you're fearing that you will hope and put your hope and trust in a person, and then that person will end up betraying it. That's really what the fear of commitment, to me, boils down to, is the fear that I'm going to put all my love, all my trust, all my hope into someone or something, and then they will not reciprocate, or they will abandon me, or they will betray me, and that is a huge fear. The fear that maybe I'll start a new business adventure and then, adventure works. A business venture is what I meant to say. A business venture, and then I'll find out that not only did I fail at the business venture, but it was actually, I was selling snake oil, it didn't work, or something like that. Right? This is the fear of hope. The fear of hope limits us, it paralyzes us, it allows us to never move forward. If we have the fear of hope, we don't move a direction. So you're plotting in the middle of the wilderness, and you have no clue which way to go. If you've got the fear of hope, you just sit there, because if you go this direction, yeah, maybe you're heading the right direction, but maybe you're heading deeper into the wilderness. Farther and farther away from life, which is this direction, and you just happen to have chosen the wrong direction. There was a philosopher, his name is William James, who was saying that was silly. Skeptics are inherently less right than people that have blind faith, was his theory. Now, I'm simplifying his theory, which was also a simplified theory, so this is double simplification. So if this sounds stupid, that's because double simplification here, okay? But the basic idea of his theory was, if you have a wrong opinion, you still have opinions, so you're closer to right than if you had no opinion because you just didn't know, right? You stood in the middle of the wilderness and you just went, I don't know, and you went nowhere. There's a movie called The Edge. And in The Edge, there's Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins in any movie, worth seeing. Okay, so Anthony Hopkins in this movie, he's this smart, really intelligent, rich guy. And he gets plopped down in the middle of the wilderness, doesn't know where to go, and he's with this other guy that's Alec Baldwin. He's kind of a duff, guy. Forget about him. Focus on Anthony Hopkins. So Anthony Hopkins is in the wilderness, and he's trying to figure out where to go. And he's using all the knowledge he has, everything he has to keep moving. But sometimes they don't really know if they're going in the right direction. And when it's kind of pointed out we might be moving in the wrong direction, or maybe we should just sit here, his rebuttal, and I'm not quoting him, Robert can later because he's good at this, but he loves this movie. But one of the things that he says is that most people die in the wilderness because they stop trying. They die in here before they die here. Before they starve, they already given up hope. And when you give up hope, you just sit there and die. Then you've seen another really great movie, 127 Hours. In 127 hours, the guy gets stuck between a rock and a hard place, literally, for 127 hours. He was hiking and he gets stuck, and his arm gets stuck, and he's just trapped there. 120 hours this guy survived. Why? Ultimately, because he never gave up hope. He kept thinking that he was going to make it and he was going to be saved. He never died in here, so he lived. If you go a direction, you're better than going no direction. But yet, still, so many times in so many different areas in our life, we kind of just stay because we're so worried about heading in the wrong direction or having hope in something that ends up disappointing us. In a youth game, and yes, I just went from 127 hours to a youth game, but in a youth game, we have this would you rather, where people have two opinions, right? Would you rather play football or baseball? And they go on the side of the wall that they believe in, and then they will argue back and forth about which is better. And it's interesting when you actually win people over to your side, because that rarely happens, and I think that happens less and less in today's society. But people will actually listen to what you have to say and then say, oh, that actually makes sense. I thought it was this, but now it seems like it was no longer, and I'm going over to that other direction. It's a miracle when it happens. We all kind of rejoice. But the fools, and I say this honestly, the fools are the ones who stand in the middle forever. They have 0% chance of being right. If 50% chance on that wall, 50% chance on that wall, well, maybe 100-0, but either way, you're wrong if you're standing in the middle. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be balancers and we shouldn't be in the middle of the road, we have to be extremists or anything like that. Again, this is a simplification of a simplification. But my point is that doubt paralyzes us, and it would be better if we started walking in a direction and then realized we'd been walking the wrong way. In fact, in that way, you're building up. Right? You know how to do it. You've been walking in the woods for a while. Yeah, maybe you're tired, but now you know what you're doing a little bit more, and you realize, oh, I've been heading the wrong direction. I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to keep moving forward. I'm going to do it. I can do this. In the movie City Slickers 2, and yes, I'm now scraping the bottom of the barrel of movie references, but in the movie City Slickers 2, that's what I got for you, okay? City Slickers 2, there's this idea that they're going to find gold. And Billy Crystal strikes again on City Slickers 2. He's going to find gold. And he's doing this a lot of adventure, and spoiler alert, they find the gold. And they do the dance that you do when you find gold. Actually, they did what's the guy who did this dance? The baseball guy? Mickey Mantle dance. They did the Mickey Mantle dance because they watched too many baseballs and there were white people who can't dance. So that's what they did. They didn't do a real jig. It was the Mickey Mantle dance. But whatever. So they find the gold. They're all excited. And then they finally get to the gold. And what do you think they realize? That's not gold at all. It was all a big game. It was all a big prank. And they scratch it and there's nothing there. Fool's gold. And they think, why did we go on all this adventure? We risk our life for this, and it was nothing. It would have been better if we never went. And then the other guy says, no, it would have, because we wouldn't have had a movie to watch. We got to have to entertain people. No, he didn't say. But he said, no, this is good because we've grown so much from the experience. And I think that's a good perspective. But that worry of fool's gold. There's a story of, I'm going to get this wrong and I don't have it in my notes here. Darby is his name. But during the gold rush, it's a famous story, during the gold rush, Darby finds gold. And he's excited about finding gold, so he buys all this nice machinery to dig in the gold. He's digging in the gold, but he's not coming up with more gold. So he's digging, he's not coming up with more gold. Finally he thinks, There was no gold here. So he decides he's going to sell all his machinery, and he sells his machinery to this one guy who's pretty smart. Goes back with some engineers, tries to figure it out. Finds out they had stopped 3 feet short of the biggest gold mine that was discovered during the gold rush of California. The biggest gold mine, 3 feet short. I think that sometimes we do that. We do that in our relationships. We do that in our relationships with each other, that we give and we give and we try to make a relationship work, and then we finally say, you know what? This is just not going to work between us. And so we give up 3 feet short of the gold. 3 feet short of the breakthrough that actually makes the relationship grow and change. I've dealt with so many youth kids that were like that with their parents. They said, oh, I've tried to make my parents understand how I feel. Because what? They've tried once or twice? If you really work with people for long enough, I can tell you people do change, just way slower and way less than you expect them to. But people do change. You just have to keep at it. And relationships do improve. You just have to keep talking. And sometimes the talking isn't even coherent because you just lost your mind. I had this happen yesterday when I was talking to a psychologist. Kate and I, we went to a psychologist yesterday because it's part of ordination. So, oh, thank you, Ann. I tried to slip in. I knew this guy, so I tried to slip in quickly. It was part of the ordination process. It wasn't because we were insane or something, or we needed help or something. You know, but Mark, he beat me to it. He's like, finally, he's seen a psychologist. Yeah, we'll find out hopefully in a week or so if I'm insane or not. Judging by where I'm going in this sermon, you're probably going to make up a conclusion quicker than that. But in a week or so, we'll find out if I'm clinically insane. It's part of the thing that they do with all the Anglican priests and the Catholic priests too. So if someone's been ordained, at least some psychologists thought they were sane. Okay? So it's a very satisfying, I think, comforting thought. Anyway, we were tested all day long, and they asked us some really weird questions, and they would hop from one topic to other, and they would word things like, why do you hate your mother so much? And I'm like, well, how do I answer that question? I'm confused. I want to answer it, but I don't know how without saying I hate my mother. Anyway, this is what psychologists do with you. Anyway, so your mind eventually is just mush, and you're like, what am I thinking about, and everything like that. So in this sermon, I do apologize if it doesn't make any sense, because that's what I came from yesterday. At the end of my psychologist time, I asked the guy, what do you think, Doc? You know, how sane am I? And he said, I think you're a good guy. And he said, in the time that I have all these priests come, there's a lot of priests that I'm just so impressed at how smart and intelligent that you are. Now, that wasn't true for me, but he said, so much of the time, that's what I'm thinking. And he said, yet, if I thought about sharing my life, sharing my secrets with these people, like letting them know what's really going on in me, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it for any of them. And he said, so for you, now he didn't say, might not be very bright, Richard, but it was implied. He said, on the other hand, I would share with you what I'm struggling with. And I took that as a huge thing, because to redeem myself from using City Slickers 2 as a reference, Harvey, which is an excellent movie with Jimmy Stewart, one of my favorite actors, you guys, some of you know. Harvey was in this movie. They actually did at the Theater Guild recently. They did a play over it, where this guy said this line, and I love this line. I'm going to talk a little bit about this guy. His name is Elwood P. Dowd, and Elwood P. Dowd is a guy who just goes around, does what he wants, is very, very nice, very pleasant to be around, very welcoming, loving of strangers. But he's kind of crazy. He actually thinks that there's a giant white rabbit that walks around with him, right? A problem. Well, at one point in the movie, he says, years ago, my mother used to say to me, she said, in this world, Elwood, you must be, she always called me Elwood. In this world, Elwood, you must be oh so smart or oh so pleasant. Well, for years I was smart. I recommend pleasant. And you may quote me, which I did. For years I was smart, but I prefer pleasant. Now this guy who's walking around with a giant white rabbit, in his mind at least, right? They understandably want to get this guy sane. Like the people that love this guy and care about this guy, like you don't want him to walk around going crazy. This is just to give you a little bit more of an impression of who Elwood P. Dowd was. One of his lines that I really like, he said, "Well, I've wrestled with reality for 35 years. Doctor, I'm happy to state I finally won out." The other line that I really like, and this is just explain how he goes through life. He says, Harvey, which is the name of the giant white rabbit in his head, Harvey and I sit in bars, have a drink or two. We play the jukebox, and soon the faces of all other people, they turn toward mine and they smile. And they're saying, "We don't know you, mister, but you're a very nice fella." Harvey and I warm ourselves in all these golden moments. We entered as strangers, soon we have friends. And they come over and they sit with us and they drink with us and they tell us the big terrible things they've done and the big wonderful things they'll do. Their hopes, their regrets, their loves, their hates, all very large because no one ever brings anything small into a bar. And then I introduce them to Harvey, and he's bigger and grander than anything they offer me. When they leave impressed. The same people seldom come back, but that's envy, my dear. There's a little bit of envy in the best of us. There Harvey is, going around, sharing with people, listening to people, loving people. Okay, and he believes in a giant white rabbit, right? So finally the aunt says, you know what, we need to take care of this problem. So she takes him to a sane asylum where they can fix him. They can give an injection and he won't see the white rabbit anymore. Well, the taxi driver that drives him there wasn't paid yet, and he wants his money now. So he gets Elwood to come and give him his money, and Elwood goes, they stop the procedure just to have it happen. And the aunt says, you know, what's the deal? You could have just waited till he had the procedure and had him, give you the money then. Well, the taxi driver says this. He said, "Lady, I've been driving this route for 15 years. I brought them out here to get the stuff, and I drove them home after they had it. It changes them. On the way out here, they sit back and they enjoy the ride. They talk to me. Sometimes we stop and watch the sunsets and look at the bird flies. Sometimes we stop and watch the birds, and there ain't no birds. Look at the sunset when it's raining. We have a swell time, and always get a big tip. But afterwards, Afterwards, I'm not as good with the girl voice. Afterwards, what do you mean? Afterwards, They crab. They yell at me. Watch the lights, watch the brakes, watch the intersections. They scream at me to hurry. They got no faith in me or my buggy. Yet it's the same cab, same driver, and we're going over the very same road. It's no fun, no tips. After this, he'll be a perfectly normal human being. And you know what stinkers they are." She stops the procedure and she says, "If I want to live with a giant white rabbit, then so be it. I'm going to live with a giant white rabbit. I'm not changing Harvey. And I'm not changing Elwood P. Dowd. Now, in the movie, you find out at the very end that maybe Harvey wasn't actually imaginary after all. Now, please listen to me and understand my point here. I am not saying that us as Christians, we believe in a giant white rabbit. In fact, I could argue with you for years about why the belief in Jesus is the more logical, more according to the evidence, more critical thinking perspective. I can almost prove to you that if you're going to look at it objectively, you're going to end up believing in God and that there's a design behind the designer behind this incredible, intricate design that we have in reality here. All right? But that's not going to change your mind anyway. Because if you don't believe, it's because you've got the fear of hope. You are so afraid of being wrong, so afraid of marching forward on this road and then end up being wrong. It's what keeps people where they are. It's what keeps people in poverty. It's what keeps people in broken relationships. It's what keeps people from trying to improve their life. Because you're so afraid of fool's gold, you're so afraid that it's just a big white rabbit, that you don't end up seeing all the possibilities and the potentials if you just march forward. Here's my perspective on a relationship with God, just like a relationship with any other human being. If I don't talk to my wife and I never go up and introduce myself, what are the odds that we will have a beautiful marriage? All right, I know you're not mathematicians, but that shouldn't have taken that long. Come on. What are the odds if I never introduce myself to my wife that we would have a beautiful marriage? 0%. If I never introduce myself to any female, what are the odds that I'm going to be single for the rest of my life? 100%. Okay? If I talk to my wife a little bit, I said hello, I did a little dance, and then went on my merry way, again, what are the odds, after seeing me dance, that she's going to be married to me? 0%. Okay? If I work on our relationship, but then when things get rough and my life gets to be a struggle, maybe there's some conflict, and I decide that I am going to stop working on the relationship, what are the odds that we're going to have a beautiful marriage? 0%. Okay, so if I work and I do everything that I can to make it the best relationship that I can, and I never give up hope, and I keep trying, is it 100% that I'm going to have a beautiful marriage? No. No, I'm not going to tell you that. But it's better than 0, and it's the only thing that's better than 0. And maybe that's depressing to you, but to me that's exciting. Because yes, you can go through life. One of the questions was, do you believe, in the exam that I took yesterday, was, do you believe that life is filled with misery and pain and struggle? I said yes for that. Now, I did write a little, clause to, explain it. And my clause was, but it's also filled with hope. It's also filled with love. It's also filled with restoration. It's always also filled with renewal, with new life, that we can spring up from these difficult circumstances to have change. Yes, life is filled with difficulty. Life is filled with misery. And if you want to live in that bubble for the rest of your life, then go right ahead. You're welcome to. It's your life to live. And I'm never going to tell you that you need to hop in another bubble. That's up to you. You can live in that doubt. Yes, there's doubt. There's doubt everywhere. I'm a skeptic. And most people like me never believed in God. They never marched forward. Now, at this point, I don't believe in God. I know God is real. That's how I feel. Now, you might define it differently, but I know God is real. You know why? Because I've walked this for a long time. And I've seen Him and had a relationship with Him for long enough that it's not a doubt anymore. But as a skeptic, I wanted to just sit there and say, I'm going to try to understand this before I ever go anywhere with it. But if I never introduce myself to my wife, I don't have a relationship with her. And if I never introduce myself to God, I never have a relationship with Him. If I start to walk away in my relationship with God when things get a little rough and I don't understand what's going on, then I have 0% chance of having a good relationship with Him. If I just share the surface level stuff and just come, on Sunday to give my time in, but never really fully am honest and authentic, then I have a 0% chance of having a good relationship with God. 0% chance. If I try and I do everything, I believe that yes, you will have a good relationship with God. Because God is 100% consistent, unlike any human being. I do believe that. But if you want to even say just a chance to have life, have eternal life with the God in heaven, I think that's well spent time. Well spent time. Just a chance to change your life. Just a chance. That's what hope is all about. So whatever you're going through, whether you don't have a relationship with God at all and you're just sitting here going, I'm going to collect a little more evidence, I'm going to collect a little more data, I can respect that, I understand that perspective. But at some point, you're going to have to pick a direction or you're going to die in the wilderness. You're going to die lost. At some point, you got to start walking. And I do find that when you start walking on that path, you start figuring out really quickly if you're going the wrong direction. Because you learn. You start to see more. Because there's only so much things you can observe when you're stuck in the same place in the wilderness. You can look around, but until you start walking a direction, you're really not going to know. And some of you say, I got God. But there's some other things that are holding you back. Maybe you don't have the relationship that you want. Maybe with the individuals around you, the community around you. Maybe you're struggling with an issue and that you have not come forward and been honest with other people about it because you fear hope. Because you fear that maybe if you shared this thing, then your hope in this person would be unfounded and they'd gossip about what you shared with them, or they wouldn't share with you the right things, or maybe they wouldn't even love you because what you've done is unlovable. Maybe you feel that way sometimes. And if you want to feel that way for the rest of your life, I can guarantee you're going to go nowhere. And you can sit in that dysfunction, in that addiction, in that disbelief for the rest of your life. You can just sit there and fester in your wounds and say, oh, it's better than if I move forward, and then ended up going the wrong direction. But is it? You've got zero chance. Maybe that's harsh to say, but I know it. I've got zero chance to make this life worth living alone. I've got zero chance of living a happy life independently. 0% chance. That's what I give myself. I think I'm pretty intelligent, fairly, or at least I'm nice to be around. That's what the doctor said. But I've got zero chance of figuring this out without help from my community, with my brothers and sisters, with the people that are there for me and want to hope and help me hope. Let's build a community together of hope. But here's the first thing. The psychologist asked me, what is the greatest asset that I look for in a friend? And I said authenticity. And when I said authenticity, I tried to think of another one. I couldn't. Because if you don't have authenticity, you don't have anything. If you don't have authenticity, they never really knew you. If they didn't know how you really felt and what you're really struggling with, what you're really dealing with, they never even really knew you, and you never gave them a chance to help, to love, to hope. Give God a chance. Give your brothers and sisters a chance. Give these people here that want to help you change your life a chance. And share how you really feel, even if it's not pretty, even if it's really ugly. Because someone's going to still love you. And I will not perfectly love you, but He will perfectly love you and perfectly accept you. And so that's where you want to start. Let's come, let's be real, let's have hope, and let's bear it all before Him.